If we know who the brand is and what the mission is around our service, we can make decisions when weird things happen. In retail, you have these companies trying to make clean what is messy. People are messy, merchandising is messy, stores are different, the product doesn't show up when it's supposed to. The customer comes in and tells you the story about how they're the best customer and they met the founder in 1965 and why won't you do this return? Like, you can handle all of those things very easily if you understand who the brand that you're working for is. Or it can make your life a living nightmare if you don't understand who the brand is. You can be really prescriptive about who you are as a brand if you want to stay in one market. That's my hot take. You want to open up in Boise, Idaho? Go ahead. And you know exactly who your client is. You can be exactly who you want. And you can tell that store manager, never veer from this because this is what the brand is and this is what our customer is. But once you start branching out, I think it's really important to be like, what is our brand?
Matt, as usual, there is a theme that we've actually talked about it kind of implicitly and explicitly, but never in very much detail. And it seems like an ongoing tension, an underlying thing that needs to be discussed at a high level, but then also more tactically so that people recognize it in the day to day. And I feel like it was episode 1, brand protection versus employee empowerment or autonomy came up. And we touched on it very lightly, but I want to bring it up again. Marie, who you met, who was a guest on this podcast, phrased it in a really beautiful way. She said, we always tried to be as global as possible, but as local as needed. And I've called on that multiple times ever since she said it. And I want to get your take on it. Where does global coherence need to relax or become local intelligence? That sounds very high level right now, but it's this, essentially I want to know when does brand consistency or the desire for brand consistency turn into awkward uniformity, things that don't work for you in real context?
Yeah, I think this, we'll dig into the details, I think, and go through some examples, but I also think that brands can't figure this out unless they have a really strong brand identity and they know who they are. So like that is like first and foremost. If they don't have that, this conversation is like PhD level for them, and they need to take that 99 course before they can even get admitted to undergrad. Like, what is your brand? What is important that is actually consistent? And I'll just like throw out some examples. Like, you're at Starbucks. Obviously, the way you make a latte needs to be the same. That needs to be a standard. I need to walk into any Starbucks in the entire world and I need to get the same latte, same product. But do I need to be greeted the same? Does every store need to look the same? Do all the baristas need to act the same? All of those things should be negotiated, in my opinion, because that's not the brand. Maybe the apron is, so maybe the uniform is. But is them greeting me the same? Are the leather chairs in the corner necessary? Like, these are all things that I think should be negotiated. How much of these different pieces are the brand? And I actually have had this discussion with employees of mine in my current role and previous ones. And to me, this is just my personal opinion, a brand is its mission and values, and what it stands for. And so there's a lot that you can change within a physical space and still adhere to that ethos of a brand without disrupting it. Because I think sometimes people get really, and I've even had hourly employees who are like, oh, we're going to move that table over there, but it's always been here. It doesn't look like a fill in the blank, a Lush store, Williams Sonoma, wherever I've worked. It doesn't look like a Williams Sonoma when we have the table over there. And I always ask, is that the brand? Is that like, or is that just something we've decided needs to be the same across the board everywhere? And so I've sort of gone on a little tangent to your direct question, but I think it becomes too cookie cutter when you're in the store, when brand standards and brand cookie cutter policies get in the way of helping your local customer. and your employees. Because again, I'm going to use America as an example, and I'm sure Canada is similar. But like Boston is not New York, is not Iowa, is not Texas, is not Miami, um, is not North Dakota. Like these are all very different places, not only with different employees, but different customers and clients. And so you really have to think, how do we, and I think one of the exercises brands should do, and maybe they do, and I'm just not a branding expert, so I don't know. I think brands should think to themselves, even if they never plan on opening a store in North Dakota or Dubai or Saskatchewan, wherever, I think they really should sit down and think, what does our brand look like in those places? How
Mhm.
do people know that it's us and that it's still us? But also, how do we not make this an affront to local customs, expectations, um, and how do we blend? Like they need to do that exercise and then come up with the policies. Instead, I think a lot of places are coming up with the policies and the visual guidelines because they're like, this is the brand. But I'm like, have you thought about how that adapts to new places? I'm not sure you have.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I totally agree. And brand, like so much we talk about is again one of those ambiguous words that if you ask 20 people what it means, you get 20 different meanings. I like to describe a brand as what people think, feel, and say about you. Because I think an important part of that is it's not just what you say it is, it's what other people say it is.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, and I think this is how it starts with companies. Everything about how you look is in service to that, to
Mm-hmm.
making people feel a certain way, think a certain thing, identify with you in a certain way. But to your point, the aesthetics become a surrogate for the brand itself, right? Like it's like we designed this system to make people feel and think a certain way, but that system needs to be flexible, right? Depending on where you are, who your market is, because other people are going to feel and think a certain way, be prompted to differently. I guess my question is like, isn't control in some ways, because I think that's what we're talking about, right? Like it's instead of asking what must be true everywhere for the brand to achieve this goal of making people feel this way, it seems like the system is asking what needs to look the same everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So help me dive into a specific example of why that doesn't work, because I get the intent. You're scaling, you can't have everybody doing different things. What needs to happen for you and your 100 other store manager peers under one brand to understand what's in your lane, what's not, what does need to be true, where do you need flexibility?
Again, we're back to the simple Becky questions. Um, I think, using visual merchandising as an example, because it goes to what we're talking about in like the
Yes.
physicality, but also of a brand, but also because it's the best example of where brands either have a lot of flexibility or none at all.
Mhm.
Um, and so one of the things that I love is that a lot of companies are, I don't even remember the question you asked me. It was just too much.
It was. To be fair, that was a all around the world, come back, like just throw it all the big questions right back on you. Yeah.
Um, but I do think like, so I'll use, like Starbucks, right? Even for their cups, like their cups that you can buy, um,
Yeah.
at the store, hot, iced, tumblers, etc. There's a planogram for that, exactly what it should look like.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Think about, and almost every single person listening to this podcast has this experience because Starbucks is so global and everywhere. You've been into more than one Starbucks. Chances are, if you really think about it, you've maybe been into 3, 5, 10 when you're on vacation. I
Yeah.
want you to think about where their cups were in that store and how many shelves there were. Just, you don't have to remember exactly, but I guarantee you, they're not all the same set of shelves. They have different heights. They're in a different place in the store. They hold a different amount of cups, but they're like, no, no, follow the picture. Um, and then, then it becomes well, follow the picture as close as you possibly can,
Hmm.
which when you do that too much as a brand, people start to be like, oh, so this isn't even really that important because you're already telling me I can't do it the way you want to do it.
Hmm.
And then when you do that, what ends up happening is people then go really rogue, and then brands snap back even more with the control, or more control.
Right.
Because what they didn't do in the first place, and I think this is more answering the question you asked, is there really needs to be really solid training for the store leader about
Yes.
who the brand is, so that when they have to make those flex decisions, they're making decisions not because they personally think the blue cup looks next to the red cup, looks
Right.
next to the white cup, but they're really looking at it through the lens of like, well, in Starbucks, we always do cool to warm or warm to cool. Every brand is a little different with their merchandising color story. Um, Roy G. Biv for those OG uh, retail people out there. But that's not how all brands do it. Some brands like a very separate, like cool, warm. But again, it's all what is that brand story? And in order to do that and execute that correctly, you need to have a really deep understanding about who the brand you're working for is. And I think how you get there is messy. And that's, you know, part of what brands and leaders don't like. It's what I've said probably on half of our episodes, if not more. Humanity is messy. We're messy. Like things are messy. And we have to be okay with that. And I think one of the best brands, and I might have used this example before, is when I worked at Lush, we went to a leadership conference. They were in like this, we were actually in an underground subway station, but it was kind of like a warehouse. It was cool. They rented it out. And they had 3 walls, empty walls set up
Hmm.
that looked like our skincare walls in all of our stores.
Yeah.
And then they split us up into 3 teams and then gave us 3 carts of skincare merchandise. And that merchandise was not all the same. Some of us were missing certain SKUs. Some of us had extra of certain SKUs. Some of our shelving was a little higher or a little lower. So all different, but they all looked like real Lush stores. They have the reclaimed wood, they have the black, they have the white. But 3 different shelving systems, 3 different assortments of product. And then they told us to build a skincare wall. No other explanation. We collaborated, we built skincare walls. We all landed in 3 very different arrangements of how the skincare wall looked. But when we all stood back and looked at it, they
Mhm.
all looked like a Lush store. And not just because the packaging is the same, but because we all understood that like you don't stack certain things more than too high because it looks messy and it makes the product look cheap. Whereas, like, obviously, I've worked at places like Old Navy or Target where, like, you stack things real high. Um, so, like, you don't stack things, you make sure certain things are a certain orientation. Like, you always put, um, face lotion with toner. You're not putting face lotion with body lotion. So, like, no one broke those cardinal rules because we all understood this is what a Lush looks like. Now, there was some feedback in there from the visual team of like, okay, you overstacked here. I'm not saying we all landed perfectly, but once those edits came through and you stood back, 3 very different walls, all 3 to brand standard. And that exercise was actually an activity of how do you merchandise your store when you run out of things or you have too much of something that you want to push through, or your store is wacky, because we've all worked in that retail store that's wacky, that has like the ceilings that are much lower than they anticipated. So in clothing, this happened to me a lot where like they'd want a shirt up hanging up top in the wall and then a pant and then in between it like a purse or a bag or a shoe or something. And you're like, literally the shoes would be over the jeans. Like the wall's too short. Like that doesn't work. And so if you don't understand the brand, you're either going to put the things that don't work because you're going to be like, well, I'm going to get in trouble if I go rogue,
Right.
or people don't understand who the brand is, so they make a really off-brand merchandising decision
Right.
and they say put shoes on a tea stand, which would look insane. But if you're not a merchandiser at heart or haven't been doing these things for years,
Hmm.
your goal then is like, well, getting it out is better than not getting it out, so I'll just put it here. Um, and that all comes back to, do leaders and then through leaders, do their teams understand who the brand is? And I think, not to ramble on because I'm sure you have 62 more questions I can't answer, but I don't want to get into this today because it's like it would be too much. But this
Mhm.
also extrapolates into customer service.
Yeah.
If we know who the brand is and what the mission is around our service, we can make decisions when weird things happen. And that's the point I'm trying to make. In retail, you have these companies trying to make clean what is messy. People are messy, merchandising is messy, the stores are different, the product doesn't show up when it's supposed to, the shipment gets lost, the customer comes in and tells you the story about how they're the best customer and they met the founder in 1965 and why won't you do this return? Like, you can handle all of those things very easily if you understand who the brand that you're working for is. Or it can make your life a living nightmare if you don't understand who the brand is, because then that's when you're flipping. You're like, where in the guide is how to handle this? Because you don't understand who the brand you're working for is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so obviously, training, it's messy, it's also time consuming, and it's also expensive. So I get why people are trying to work around it. And I really do think that a lot of corporate departments feel like being prescriptive it's helpful. It's saving you time. It's saving, it's training in some ways. But let me ask, so whether you want to talk about Lush or another company who did it really well, did they tell you beyond, we don't want to stack this like this because we want it to feel, high end or elevated. We don't want it to look too cluttered. Did they tell you why? Like getting back to the brand, did they tell you this is how we like people to feel when they come into our store? This is how we want people to perceive us? How deep did it go?
That's interesting. I think every company has been a little bit different. So, at Old Navy, it was really because Old Navy is like a lower priced brand and it's not necessarily like fashion first, it's like value first.
Hmm.
And so Old Navy went to the level of this is who our average customer is. I cannot remember the name they gave her, but she had a name. It was
Yeah,
like
for some.
Jane or someone. It was a name and she had an age and she had a background.
Yeah.
And so we were merchandising for her.
Hmm.
And so the idea was like, I forget what the thing is, but it was basically like she's a mom, she's busy, she cares about value. And so when we merchandise, we want to merchandise like outfits together. We want to make it so that Jane can see there's a sweater, there's the shirt it goes under, there's a pair of pants, there's a couple of shoes options. That's why, it's not, say, merchandised like a store where you have all the sweaters together and all the denim together and all the shoes together, like more like a department store. It's outfitted. And the reason you're doing that, and that's also why you're not going to put a yoga pant, with a wool sweater, um, with a sandal. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to wear those things. So you obviously have to have an understanding of like what people actually wear together.
Hmm.
And that was the idea behind merchandising. But also, sometimes when we had like price changes, if you were a really sort of smart merchandiser, it was also down to like, I want a sale pant with a full price top. Um, and you really understood like that's what we're going for, like down to the nitty gritty. Um, and, I think at Lush, part of it was also like, you can't sell, and this is, anything in high end, same thing with Williams Sonoma. You're not going to sell someone a $60 face cream or a $300 pot if it looks like they're shopping at like a TJ Maxx or something like that. So it has to be like clean and minimalist and almost look like there's not enough of those. But also at Lush, one of the core values of the brand, um, they have 5 values, and one of them is fresh, because their product is made fresh mostly without preservatives, and so it expires quicker than, say, if you go to a department store and buy body cream or skin cream. So by
Right.
overstacking it, you're making it look, even if that is the true amount you sell through in a week, it gives the perception of not fresh. Um, So you're actually like betraying a value by stacking it, and making it look cheap. So it's not just about price, it's also about like hurting the value, that proposition that we've like said that we believe in. And again, like there's certain things like hand creams at Lush, like you fly through them. But let's say you sell 50 a week. You're not going to put 50 on the shelf. That makes it look like it's not handmade, which is another value. Like it's not fresh. So you put out seven. And then every time you sell one, you replace the seven, and it looks cleaner, sleeker, and it gives the customers the perception of the value that you're trying to communicate. And we all understood that that was the why behind it. Like that's why you don't stack it. That's why you don't show too much. Um,
Mm.
and it was the same thing at Williams Sonoma. Like you wouldn't treat a La Crusade pan, and like so even when you flip the lid over, so like everyone has seen this at whether it's Williams Sonoma or Crate and Barrel or wherever you go, like a stack of La Crusades in maybe the same color or different colors, and the lid is flipped over, so like the other one is sitting inside the underneath of the lid. But when you do that, it can wear away the enamel on the lid because it's sitting on the pan. So there's these little plastic spacers you use. And it's like, even that is like, plastic spacers don't look super cute in merchandising, but we're also not going to betray how we want clients to take care of the pan. Like, we don't want to be like,
Mm.
well, you can store it like this because it's fine, because it's not fine. That's not how we would tell you to store it. So that's not how we're going to store it. And so
Mhm.
the merchandising matches how we expected people to use the product. And it was the same with like tablescapes at Williams Sonoma. Like, you don't just throw down plates on a table. Like, it's literally set the way you might set it at home.
Mhm.
Um, and the understanding, it was a, it was a balance, because obviously you're still trying to sell things. But again, at Williams Sonoma, you understand like the goal isn't just to sell things. We're also selling someone like a look at how, not only how pretty this is, but how nice would it be to sit at home and have this, like, we're, to your point about feelings, like that's the feeling we're trying to create. Home is the feeling we're trying to
Yeah.
create. And so it doesn't look like home, because at home, unless you're a hoarder, you're not going to have stacks of plates and cups and boxes of cups on your table. You're going to have the table set. So it was our way of like welcoming people into the store in
Right.
a way that they would want to welcome guests into their home.
Those are all really brilliant examples of, we're always talking about how do you operationalize your values, your mission, and things like that. And it sounds like those are great examples, right? Like Old Navy had a customer persona that got very personal. This is how we want this person to feel. This is what she's dealing with. It sounds very empathetic. This is what she's coming here to do. And so we build our store this way to help her. With Lush, talking about the values being fresh and handmade, so not overstacking, like that's all Williams Sonoma, the feeling of home. That sounds really helpful
Mhm.
in understanding the brand and understanding the why and making better decisions in your store as a store manager when you maybe run into uh, wacky store issues.
Mhm.
So, can you talk to me about how this has shown up in a way that paints you into a corner where you're like, "Wow, I don't actually feel like this works here." Can you give me an example of that?
I'm going to omit the brand, but yes.
Yeah.
Um, I work somewhere where it's very prescriptive about where everything goes. Exactly, it is to be in this order. Um, it has to look exactly like this. And
Mhm.
minus some of the fixture things, because that's little and adaptable, right? The issue with at this brand was that that order of product and the way it was set up didn't make sense for the flow of clients for our store.
Mhm.
So it created like bottleneck issues where everyone crowded the front of the store, but that's where it was supposed to go, like on that table. And I remember having this conversation, it's, a brand that really cares about its image and its who it is. And I remember having a conversation with a leader who worked for me, and I was going to move the table, ask for permission later kind of thing. And he's someone who cares a lot about not just our brand, but branding in general, because that's just like something that's like he thinks that brands are very intentional and that like our job in stores is to like deliver that
Hmm.
that they've set forth. And I wouldn't disagree with that. Although I'm a little bit more in the my end is my job is to make you money so that you can still be a brand. Um, that's my goal. Because if we don't make money, it doesn't matter what the hell you want, because you don't got money to have a store.
Hmm.
But so we were talking about it, and I asked him, "Do you think the table being here though is directly related to who we are as a brand? Like this table in this spot exactly how they set it out for. I know someone decided that and made that choice, but looping through our values and what's important, and I like said our value to him. Do you think that I'm breaking that? I'm dishonoring that by moving the table? Now, I did get away with moving the table because we had some changes in our corporate structure. So I think no one knows what originally my store was even supposed to look like. Um, But had I gotten a visit, I probably would have been forced to put the table back, even though it didn't make sense for clients, because it wasn't even about clients. And I would argue, then who was it about? Like, and I think that's an example of like someone's ego is involved. And what's funny is in my career, not to like do this one off, but in my career, I've almost been accused, well, I have been accused directly either by people above me and sometimes an employee or two of my own ego being involved because I want to move something a certain way. And it's viewed as like, well, you just want it the way you want it. And I'm like, no, I'm viewing clients interact with it and it doesn't make sense for them.
Hmm.
And like, if you just stand here, which we don't do enough of in retail, in my opinion,
Right.
watch how people interact with your brand.
Hmm.
And actually, I would argue that is more indicative of like, are you bringing home your brand mission? And I'll use Williams Sonoma, not this company, as an example. So at Williams Sonoma, I'm going to sort of make up an example, but like, well, first I'll start with what really happened. When people walked in and they saw those tablescapes set, a lot of people paused and were like, oh, this is beautiful. And
Yeah.
honestly, the best compliment our visual person, Lisa, could get is if someone sat at the table. Like they were so compelled by what it looked like that they literally sat down and were like, "Oh my god, this is so nice." Like cuz they felt like I want this experience at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you don't merchandise like that and you kind of make it look sloppy and it you don't care if people feel like they're at home and you were to observe clients walking in and sort of like literally, and we had this once, and to me this is a sign we merchandise poorly. So I don't even have to make something up. Someone grabbed a chair from a table and was like, can I buy this? Now obviously that's a display table, right?
Yeah.
But clearly we had made it look so junky that they thought you could just strip that table for parts and buy it. So to me it's like if you just stand back and watch, oh my god, someone's sitting and they feel like they're at home, you've completed your mission. If someone's trying to buy the physical chair sitting right there, you've clearly made it not look like a display and not like they're meant to relax. You made it look like this is TJ Maxx and there should be a tag on that chair and I can just scan it at the register and they can walk out with it. Um, then you haven't matched what you're trying to do as a brand. And so you know it's wrong. And I think there needs to be more of that, but especially in store leadership, where people go, am I like, is how people are interacting with the store matching, you know, what we're trying to do here?
Hmm. So the one where you did move the table, like, tell me how that went down. Did you have to point out how would that work? Did you point out the issue that it was actually like a bad shopping experience?
So, yes. And the only way I proved it to everybody, honestly, was to just do it, which has been like sort of my career MO that I kind of, it's funny. There's like sort of this like narrative. I mean, I've sort of set up the narrative about myself, but other people have it for me as well that I just like break rules to break rules. But really, it's just I've found that like I almost always have to. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, there's a couple times I've broken a rule where it like hasn't worked well for me, and then I just go back to the rule.
Right.
Like, I just snap back. I don't like dig my heels in. But like we moved this, it changed the flow of clients in our store, got the bottleneck to stop happening,
Hmm.
and also led to a lot of clients being happier because there was other sections they were trying to shop that they couldn't get to because like our core product was like junking up the front of the store. Um, and so it, and now it's still like that, like in that place. So you can, I think a lot of times that's the discussion we need to have is not like, is just around like, is this actually core to the brand?
Right.
And I would argue merchandising is core to the brand. Obviously, if you took, um, I'll use an extreme example. If you took Valentino product and tried to merchandise it like you would Old Navy product, you'd be like, I am, what is this? Obviously, that's not gonna work. So I do think that there's a piece that merchandising is important, obviously, but
Hmm.
the flow or exactly or being so rigid about it, I don't think is important, especially when you have different markets with different weather patterns, with different clients who value different things. You can still be the brand. And I think some stores do that with their design of their store, like the aesthetic of their store. I think that is the perfect place you get to have all the control, right? Um, like Starbucks, well, now they're kind of remodeling some, but like it used to be that every Starbucks inside looked exactly the same. Most people wouldn't notice what order the cups were in merchandised because you've already designed the store to be the aesthetic of the store.
Right.
That's where corporate, I think, you have all the control. But when it comes to how all the product lands once it gets there, I don't think we need to be as prescriptive. Um, and I had someone argue with me that it's like different in like luxury versus non-luxury, which like sure, a little bit. But also clients are still different. That's the piece that really gets me. Like clients are what I'm determining this by, not my own aesthetic for things, but really what do clients want and see? And actually, a good example that has nothing to do with merchandising per se, but just perspective. I worked for a British company and they have an idea in London and in Britain, but specifically London about like what luxury looks like and what expensive looks like, both in sort of brands, but also people, how they present themselves. Had a woman walk into our store and spend an obscene amount of money, and she was in leggings. And this is 12 years ago. Leggings, so like leggings aren't as like pervasive as they are right now. So leggings and like this ratty tank top. And she spent an obscene amount of money. And my boss, who was visiting, made a comment, not derogatory, but just was like kind of like surprised that that woman bought that stuff. And I'm like, because in Boston, we don't, wealth isn't really showy in Boston. Like a lot of people have money look the worst. In fact, I would argue a lot of people who get overly dressed to go out to a fancy dinner in Boston are much less better off because they think that that is what it looks like. Now, you go to LA or Miami and it's all about showing how much you got. And why I'm saying that in terms of retail is when it comes to merchandising, your clients are so different. Like in Miami, maybe you have to like have one skincare item on the shelf to show them that they're special and rare and like you're the only person buying this. And then the second they leave, you replace it. In Boston, I'm guarantee you, I can picture it now. I'm gonna have a woman who lives in a $14 million townhouse and she wants to buy two of those, and she's gonna be like, "Where's the other one?" And I'm like, "Oh, we keep it in the back." And she's like, "Can I just grab what I want? Why can't I grab what I want?" And so, is it really worth adapting your brand because you think this is what high end looks like, but high end doesn't look the same in every market. It just
Hmm.
doesn't. So you need to decide how are you going to adapt that? Because let me just tell you, in Boston, most, unless they're like old money, or
Right.
maybe new money. I'm not even sure now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, there's only one type of really wealthy person in Boston that wants what a lot of luxury people anticipate that service looks like. A lot of them are like, because you also have to think about, I'm going into like the minutia of Boston here, but I think it's important to illustrate how different cities are. Boston is a city that is built on healthcare and science, industry wise. We have a lot of biotech firms, a lot of hospitals, best healthcare in the world. We have all of those are the industries. So the wealthy people, they're coming from MIT, they're coming from Harvard, they're in tech. These are people who are very in control.
Right.
And so when you like, there's a luxury store on the street I work on right now that, you know, I don't talk about my work a lot often, but I'll briefly say here, we let people touch the perfume in my store because that's our brand's thing. Touch, interact, smell. There's a perfume place a couple doors down where literally they spray it for you. Like you can't touch the bottle. I
Right.
had a client come into our store and I was like giving her the layout, but she says to me, "Oh, so I actually get to touch the bottles here?" And I was so confused because I had never been into that other place before. And I was like, "Yeah, did someone here not let you touch bottles?" And she goes, "No, no, not here. I was just over there." And apparently, no, can't touch the bottles there. Um, and it was just it's a funny dichotomy where like that other store, they think luxury is someone not touching it. And I don't think that the difference between luxury and not luxury is how much control customers have. I think luxury versus non luxury has to do with what your culture is in your area. Like, and again, so for Boston, wealthy people want to touch shit. They're like, I have money. I should be able to do whatever I want. Whereas obviously, if I get a client from India or the Middle East or
Mhm.
parts of Europe, they really do. They want me to uh, squeeze the hand cream out of the thing and put it on them directly. Oh my God, if I did that to someone in Boston, I'd be like, why are you touching me? But
Right.
we view one as luxury service and one as not, when reality, like, you can't have that as a brand and then be a global brand. You can be really prescriptive about who you are as a brand if you want to stay in one market. That's my hot take. You want to be open up in Boise, Idaho, go ahead. And you
Right.
know exactly who your client is. You can be exactly who you want, and you can tell that store manager never veer from this because this is what the brand is and this is what our customer is. But once you start branching out, I think it's really important to be like, what is our brand? And I don't think luxury is, for many brands, they're like, we're luxury. What the hell does that even mean? What does
Right.
that mean? Define it. What does that look like to you? Because again, that's different in different markets. Again, in the Middle East, in India, in parts of Europe, in parts of America, in old money parts of America, yes, luxury service looks or Japan, luxury service looks a certain way.
Right.
Um, but in other places, it doesn't because that's not how the clients view it. So copping out to say this is how we should look visually because we're luxury. Well,
Right.
who made that determination that that's what luxury looks and feels like? Because again, and I keep using Boston, but I want everyone listening to think about their own city and what makes your city unique and how that affects service and what a store looks like. Because again, Bostons are also in a rush. So if you design any part of your business to be like purposely slow because you think like intentionality is luxury, okay, sure. But then I would argue maybe you shouldn't be in that market. Like if you are so steadfast in what you want to be, then either you shouldn't be in that market or you should be okay with the fact that the ceiling to how well you can do in that market is definitely there. Like if you're not willing to sacrifice anything at all. And I think that's a real conversation brands need to figure out. And they need to figure it out before they open a store. If you've already opened a store, it's too late. And now we have to go back and retrain.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, and I think a lot of these examples, is a tension between this fight to keep brand perception really pristine and just straight up function.
Hmm. Yes.
Like, yeah, both for
Functional
you as a,
food, yes.
yeah, the woman in a rush. Like, don't make me go to the back.
Mhm.
This is not a functional way to do this in this market. I feel like another time you mentioned even just the way something was prescriptively merchandising, just being really hard to stay on top of and keep tidy.
Yes. Well, I think back to the Lush example, right? So you only should have like, and seven wasn't a real number. I'm just making up numbers. Like, let's say you only have seven hand creams
Mhm.
because you want it fresh, but also it's going to be a busy Saturday. So
Right.
you have to figure out how function and brand perception match. And so in my store, I was lucky. I had a very big store in Boston. And so we actually put hand cream in three places, but three places where it was very unlikely that a client would hit all three spots like in a row. So like it's not like they were going to be like, wow, they have so much hand cream they're trying to hawk on us. It was really just a way to like keep more out without overstacking. And that was allowed because Lush really does let you, and that's honestly the beauty of Lush in as a brand is they're very good about being internally about like this is who we are as a brand, but we want to make money. So your goal is make the money, but
Yeah.
never disappoint the brand. Those are your only,
Mhm.
literally as a store manager, honestly, every other business take notes. Um, that was literally the only two rules I really had as a store manager
Yeah.
was make money and then but do it in a way that always honors the brand. Um, and we've trained you on what the brand is. So, and then if you have questions, obviously ask the questions, because we re-merchandise a bunch of times when I took over that store. And there were a couple of times that someone came in and they were like, maybe not this. But it was like small tweaks or like feedback that I got. And I was like, oh, that's helpful now. And then I always got the why. It wasn't just because again, my store was bigger than most stores.
Yeah.
So they couldn't show me a guide. I mean, there was a guide and it was helpful to kind of like understand the vibe we were going for, but like my store looked so different, I couldn't like match a picture. But one time I wanted to get more shower gels out. And so I re-merchandised and added a shelf and did this thing. And my boss came and was like, okay, like I love the idea. I love how you're trying to do it, but here's the thing. It now looks like someone's at like a convenience store or like a department, like not a department, like a health and beauty section of a big store where it's all just kind of like formatted the same. It all looks rented. It um doesn't look like us. And so there needs to be more like texture and color. And so like we merchandise some like gift sets in there, whatever. And so like once we made that change though, and I stepped back and he was like, now look at it. It's like, oh, okay, now I get what you're saying.
Right.
Um, because again, I sometimes, and admittedly, I can be too much about function. I'm just
Right.
trying to sell the things. I'm just trying to run a profitable store, guys.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I do often need the feedback. I believe one of the old visual people for William Soma listens to this. And so Kelly, she's probably nodding her head in her car right now, like, yes, Matt, function, yes, too much function. Um, that's why Christmas merchandising and me get really along because I'm like, oh, function? You want function? I got function. But so yeah, there is this marriage of the two. I think you nailed it. Like, how do you marry those two? And I think um make it work for everybody. I think sorry, one of the examples that I'm thinking of too is like Starbucks recently decided to close all their like mobile pickup stores because they built all these stores that are like mobile pickup only um and not like seated, and they decided that that was like not their brand because blah blah blah. I would argue my hot take though is they just put a lot of them in the wrong spot. Why were you
Mm.
trying to put some of them in a suburb? That's
Right.
not who wants the fast experience, that's the person who wants to sit on their laptop and do their work. After we get off this podcast, that's where I'm going to get some stuff done I have to do for work. Like
Yeah.
in the suburb. And it's nice. The store I go to, by the way, I need to shout them out on LinkedIn because they're every time I go, I'm like, wow, this is like someone should come here and just be like, this is how it's done. Anyway, but in the Boston or like in New York, yeah, definitely put some checkout stores, like, you know, I
Yeah.
or mobile pickup stores, sorry, like without registers. Like we, the leather seats, maybe we don't need it. Like maybe I still, because again, think about it from a client perspective. They're saying that, okay, we need to close these stores because they go against, we're trying to be a third place and we're about welcoming people and community and whatever. But I'm a customer, let's say I'm a dedicated like Starbucks person. And I wouldn't say that about myself. No offense, Starbucks, but I'm a casual Starbucks goer. But let's say I was a dedicated, like really hardcore, go every day for work. But now I'm in the city for the weekend. I'm taking my kids to the museum. Me going to a mobile pickup store where I don't have that same level of attention and no one knows my name and it's a little bit more anonymous, to me isn't breaking a brand value. You're offering
Right.
me the same product I love in a format that makes sense for the environment that I am in, and I get to remain a loyal customer throughout the entire journey of where I am and what I'm doing in life. And
Right.
again, yeah, I returned to my home store and I'm like, oh my God, I tried one of those mobile pickup stores. It's not the same as you guys though. And then I throw my tip in and we all laugh. Like, um, cue music over the video that we've just created for corporate. Um, um, like see previous episodes for relevance. But so to me, it's like it really is about like what is the client doing and who are we going for? Yeah, I don't know. That's just my hot take about that.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And like I knew it would be a winding discussion. This is like it is both a huge and like specific,
Hmm.
which is what I wanted. I wanted to frame the big picture tension and then also just really bring to life how it makes your job better or worse, or your results better or worse, for sure. So if I'm starting to summarize, it sounds like what I'm hearing for one, it sounds like it should be a given, but it's not. You need to have a strong brand in the first place. If you're going to ask people to adhere to these very prescriptive brand standards, have a strong brand beyond the prescriptions. That means empower, especially your store leaders, with your values, maybe like Lush did, so they have a deep understanding of the why, and if something doesn't work, they know how to accommodate. Something like a customer persona is a great idea, like Old Navy did, so you know who this is for, and you can make decisions that way through that lens. Or something like Williams Sonoma, it should feel like home. Like those
Hmm.
are all very they resonate. They're flexible things that you can work within, I think. Two, map where and be real where you are in terms of importance. Maybe even like draw a spectrum with, brand precision on one end and function slash, performance on the other, and be real about where you are. And if you're closer to that brand end, be realistic and give your leaders permission to know that, like, yeah, sales isn't the most important thing. Like, the long-term preservation of this brand for whatever reason is.
Hmm.
I'm actually doing that with like one of the projects I have right now, because one of the tensions that kept coming up is, regarding sustainability, is so many of the store managers was like, sure, but we're a business, right? Like I have these expectations. We're not a nonprofit, we're a business. And so like I need the brand to identify where they are realistically on that. Like, look, from that Ryanair, all that matters is this quarter, to like Patagonia.
Hmm.
I actually don't care about sales at all. Like, I care about the planet more. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Hmm.
Any other final thoughts?
I'm gonna queue up a future episode. Um, and have a final thought, which is I think more high level people need to come do store visits. And when they do, I think they need to do a lot more observing, not of the employees, but actually of the customers.
Yep.
And ask themselves, is everything about this experience matching what we wanted for Jane, for example? Like, am I seeing, and yeah, obviously the employees play a role in that, but like, is the merchandising, is the flow of the store? I can't tell you how big, I could have an entire podcast episode ranting to you about the flow of stores, about where tables are, how people walk through, whether a stroller can get through, a wheelchair, whether it makes sense to have certain things so crowded to get, like, whole rant about that. And I think that also ties into brand identity. But yeah, my final thought is really, I think there just needs to be a little bit more observation in retail. And I think also my call out to store leaders and even hourly employees is observe almost like you're just not a human, like disassociate a little bit. We all do it in retail to cope anyway. So while you're doing that disassociation, like observe what's happening with clients and be like, are we living up to the brand's idea? Those bad corporate videos that they made me watch, is this actually how people interact with our store? Because if it's not, where are we going wrong, or how are we doing it a disservice, and how could we make it better? Or also, how are the ways that they forced us to do it inhibiting us? And can I provide someone some gentle feedback and say, hey, that corporate video you made me watch, where the client comes in and does ABC, well, they can't do that because this is blocking them, or we put this too high, or whatever the case may be. Again, I will end with, use corporate's own words, tools, and videos against them. It is your best way to get what you want. I have built an entire leadership career around it. And that's where I'll end.
Oh man, the like I'm just picturing us as like a devil and angel on shoulders. And if I would play Angel right now, it'd be like, I 100% agree with that. There, in a less I don't know, malicious sounding way, because I always talk about pre-framing, right? Like talk about upfront, get the clarity up front so you know what they want. You guys have that through those videos.
Mm-hmm.
So leverage it to help corporate better understand why and hey, a good corporate department will love to hear it. We'll be really grateful to hear it.
I agree.
All right. Thanks as always, Matt.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.